Looking to start your first vegetable garden this year, and you're being ambitious and you're wanting to plant seeds for the very first time, or maybe just want to learn from someone else's mistakes, then maybe you should watch this video. And I go into a little bit of what I learned from my first seed starting experience in 2020 and what I'm going to do differently in 2021 because of that. Okay, so the first thing that I did when I got excited, we wanted to do a garden, and this was actually before COVID-19 pandemic really came about in March, really big, of 2020. And so we just were excited to start our first garden. It was the first year we felt like we had enough time to start our garden, our family garden. And so we immediately jumped into wanting to start with seeds because seeds are more affordable than going to the store and buying transplants. So we were like, okay, let's get everything ready, me and my husband, for going ahead and seed starting. We actually did a seed starting setup in our garage with grow lights and tried to gather as much information as we could to start out. So obviously you get really excited, you go to the store and you buy your seeds, and that's what we did. And then I just started them, and I really, that's a mistake that I learned, is that I shouldn't have done. I just started everything from seed. That is not something you want to do. And if you read the back of the seed packets, and I did read them, but I kind of ignored them. I was like, you know what? We want peas, and we want beans, and we want corn, and I started it all from seed last year. And honestly, not only did it just take up a lot of room, it was too early to be starting all this, and some plants just do not grow well as transplants. They actually do better. Research shows that they do better being directly sown into the ground rather than transferring them as a seedling into the garden. So that was something that I was not aware of, and now I am. And so next year we will not be, or this year, sorry, in 2021, I will not be starting everything from seed. I actually have created an entire spreadsheet to tell me my ambitious self, because I think it's so much fun, and I would love to start it all from seed, but it's just not the best thing to do indoors. I will directly sow a lot of my things from seeds out in the garden, but for indoors, I have a plan this year of when exactly to start every plant I want to start inside, and then also the plants that are going to go outside. So definitely read your seed packets, the back of them, and even though it's so exciting and you're so ambitious when you first start, do not start everything from seed inside, and especially don't do it too early, because I did it very early and some things just grow really fast. That's the second lesson I learned, is that not only did I start everything from seed, but some of it just grew so quickly and did not need to be started inside that early. For example, peas. I planted sugar snap peas, and this was in like the very beginning of February, maybe even close to the end of January. I started it inside, and I mean, within just a couple weeks, they were so tall, and I only have so much room on my shelves and to move my grow lights up and down. So I was trying to hardy them off sooner than I probably should have, and they just really did. They should have been directly sown into the garden to begin with. So you have to think about those things. And when it says that if you are going to seed start it, a lot of those packets will say, 2 to 4 weeks or 4 to 6 weeks before your average last frost date. And so you really want to pay attention to that, because if not, you're going to end up with these plants that are really too big, and then it's too cold outside to really do something with, and then they become weaker because they're not being grown properly. So you really want to pay attention to that time frame that they give you. There's a reason that it's there. I know you're excited and you want things to start growing again. You're tired of winter and all the dead, but You just have to wait, spend your time planning. Planning is better and being prepared than being overwhelmed and ending up with plants that aren't even very healthy, and they're not going to thrive in their environment because they didn't get started off correctly. So those are the two that I learned. Another one was do not, I repeat, this bit me in the butt this past year. Do not plant your transplants, your seedlings that you've started indoors. Do not plant them in the garden too early. I know we even last year we did our research, we paid attention to our frost dates for our area in Arkansas. And so like I was so eager and so ambitious with it being my first year, and honestly my transplants were really healthy. I had hardened them off. I thought they were gonna do great. And so that average last frost date came around, which I think is April 14th for my zone, where I am. And we put them out in the garden like that day, or that, like literally it was that day. It might have been a couple days before it because I was just so excited. And here it comes, I mean, we planted all of it. We were so excited. And here it comes a week later, we had a major frost. And I lost almost every one of those pretty little seedling transplants that I had planted and worked so hard to keep alive and thriving. And I was devastated. I remember walking, we had to end up going to a local nursery to buy transplants because I was like, I don't want to start this late in the season. I did directly sow a few things, but I remember walking around this nursery and just being depressed. I didn't even want to buy any of their stuff because I was like, that stuff did look better than this, but you know what? I don't have it anymore. So that is definitely a lesson to be learned. You don't have to wait until that frost date. You might want to wait a couple weeks after. And even if you do, you still could plant them, at that frost date or right around the frost date. But watch the weather. I didn't do that. I didn't really pay attention that much to the weather, and I could have prevented them even when they were in the ground so early. Not really considered that early since we did wait to the frost date, but I could have prevented it if I would have went and covered my plants, but I didn't pay attention to the weather. So I just woke up and wanted to cry because all my plants were gone. So that is a lesson to learn. Another lesson I learned was when I was actually going to start my seeds inside. I had watched several videos on how to do it, and none of them actually really described how small some of these seeds are. And so I got these some packets. I remember ones of some flowers that I was actually seed starting, and they were so tiny. Like they were so tiny that I didn't know how to separate them at all. I didn't really look at how to separate them. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna sprinkle them in this container. And because I did that, they grew. They did. I was so excited when I saw green in the little seedling container, but none of them thrived. And what the videos I had seen told me, they were like, oh, well, you can just, thin them out. And I tried to do that, but because I planted so many into that, not even thinning them out helped. So none of those seedlings were very healthy. So I definitely learned not to do that, to take my time to try to separate them a little bit. When they talk about actually thinning them out, the smart thing to do is to plant 2 to 3 seeds of something in the same little flat container. And that way you could easily thin it out from there. But you don't want, I probably had in this little bitty pot container, it was probably over 150 seeds that had started, and it was just none of them could thrive in that type of environment. So I do actually think it's good to start a couple, 2 or 3 seeds in each little flat, and then thin those down, and they may not even all germinate, so that actually guarantees that you'll have more plants that actually produce and start. But don't just sprinkle them everywhere like I did. It's not going to turn out that great for you. Okay, so those are the lessons that I learned that I feel like I didn't do everything correctly and that I'm going to change this year going forward. But there are 2 things that I felt like I did fairly well, considering it was my first year. And one of those was that I actually did keep a planting journal, and it was nothing fancy. It was literally me just writing down that I planted this at this time, or I did this at this time, kind of thing. It was like when I transplanted it outside, things like that, the date I started the seeds indoors. And it's very smart to do that because this year in 2021, in January, while I've been planning my new garden, I've been able to look back at that and actually see and adjust my planting schedule based on that journal. And that was great advice that I had found online to do that. And so I feel like especially if you're new to this, you're not going to remember everything. You feel like you will at the time, but you're not. So if you could just jot a note down, it doesn't even have to be handwritten. You could put it in your phone. A lot of people do. My husband has always been a fan of like voice recordings, just to remember things. And so just keep any notes like that because it will help you the next year when you go to start planting. Another thing that I felt that I did really well, which all of us can do, and it's so great, is get involved in a community, whether it's a Facebook group that's local to your area, or if you find a homesteader person that plants a garden close to you, talk to them, get involved in the community because people are more than willing to share information, and there is just so much knowledge that people have with their experiences, and it's just so smart to talk with people because you will be amazed at what you learn. And so if I had a question, like it was our first year, so when we didn't know when a plant had like a disease and we were like, what's going on with this plant? I could post a picture on this Facebook group and I got, 30 to 50 responses. Like people were just more than willing to share the knowledge that they've acquired throughout their years, which is awesome. So get involved in the community, watch YouTube videos, support local businesses, go into your co-ops, your local supply stores, talk to them. You'd be surprised what they're willing to share with you. But anyways, that's what I learned from my experience in 2020 with our first vegetable gardening and our seed starting journey. And so follow along this year. I'm going to do some videos when I actually go to seed start this coming February for our vegetable gardening in the spring. So y'all have a wonderful day. God bless.